All right, welcome everyone to the Paketo Working Group weekly meeting. We appreciate your time joining us today. Uh, Let me share my screen real quick here. Again, I'm sharing the notes in case you don't have it handy. Um, Here it is. Please consider adding yourself to the attendees list, including your affiliation. Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone who would like to take notes today? No. Right, I can do it if there's no objection. Cool. New faces. Well, not exactly. Tell team here. Welcome y'all. Cool. So we'll start reviewing outstanding RFCs. Okay. Okay, this one. The RFC for a health checker Buildpack. Wondering if there's any additional comment. There are updates, recent updates.
I finally got around to digging into some of these long threads that we have between Dan and I. I mean, I gotten a bit lost in the details in some of these threads, so it's too bad that Dan is out today because I think the synchronous conversation would help wrap up what's outstanding. I think the big question comes down to like whether it needs to be configurable at runtime and how. I think the way things are proposed with the arguments, it might be hard to change some of these things at runtime, like the port it's checking and stuff like that. But because you can change some of those elements of the app at runtime, I do think we need an answer for configuring the health checker to match at runtime in those cases. And then how is just a matter of stylistic questions at this point, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. Any other comment or question? No. Yeah, I think we should add comments or questions to the discussion itself and see if we can have the synchronous conversation very soon with Daniel. All right, next up, the support for Yarn-Berry.
Okay, yeah, so had some conversation with Ryan today that I think provides some direction going forward. I think so I was able to provide some clarity here for this first question. I was able to generate SBOM without leveraging the node module bomb Buildpack at all. So I think that's what we'll continue to do going forward. As for the other two, I think I'll also add this context here to the discussion itself, but I think some of the concerns for this second question may become irrelevant after we evaluate this new direction of not creating more than one build pack and just including the different code paths as packages in the existing Yarn install build pack. There just may not be as many gotchas with detection and such once we've hashed that out. So I think that remains to be seen. But this third one, sorry, is in a similar boat, but I think it was interesting to see the opinion that it could be confusing to see Yarn install when explicitly striving for 0 installs. I figured the build pack itself would be responsible for deciding whether or not to run the actual yarn install command. I hadn't considered pushing that decision upwards to the detection criteria itself. I guess once I've fully evaluated the alternate path of just having one build pack, things might be a little bit clearer with this. But as far as that concern, I guess, does it seem unreasonable to make that decision within the build pack itself, Emily, or is it like?
No, I don't think it's unreasonable. It's mostly an aesthetic question. And there are already cases where we make some aesthetic compromises because it's, more viable to make these decisions at build time or not possible to do them at detect time. Just throwing it out there as a question, like if it was easy to make it opt out at detect, I think it would be pleasing. If you're saying 0 installs and then you see that there's no yarn install, but if it's not possible, the practical things matter here more than the aesthetics.
Got you. I think in that case, then I'll forge on with the refactor, and then once some of that has been, some of the, I guess, threads have been, the loose ends have been tied up, then I can revisit this and answer it a little better. And other than that, I think that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Okay, next one. Add library load library from the utilities team. I don't see Josh. Ah, yeah, Josh is here. Yeah, wondering if there's any additional comment. There are pretty recent comments here.
Yeah, that's my bad. I have been being a bad tooling maintainer and not going over this as rigorously as I should. So I just went in just before this. I'd like to have a little bit of conversation back and forth with Josh, but like I think the overall, I personally don't have any problems with the overall idea, just some of potentially some of the interface work.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually going to mention that if there hasn't been a whole lot of conversation or movement to get this closed, that could be a signal it's not, it's not generating any interest, from the community, which is fine. But if that's not the case, if you feel like you're going to take a look at it, then I'll wait for that feedback.
Great. Thank you, Josh and Forrest. Okay, and now the dependency management RFCs.
Yes, the RFCs have not been updated since we last talked about them. So I haven't looked at some of the newer comments. I did see that there were some new ones, but I haven't been able to read through them yet. The status of these right now is that Joshua and I were working on some investigation to solidify the contract between what will be required of Buildpack authors and versus Stacks maintainers. So that work has wrapped up more or less, and I'm now in the process of updating the RFCs, and then I will be like updating things based on the new comments that have come in. So unfortunately, that's not ready for today's working group, but it definitely will be for next week, and we can discuss.
Got it. Thank you, Sophie.
One of the things I'd like to do here as we push this forward is try to get, when Dan's back, get him more involved in this as well. Like if it's the plan to also move Java Buildpacks over to talk about the trade-offs and migration steps there as well. And like whether we need to standardize more things in order to accomplish that. Like I think there are some areas where the metadata format is actually different between the different build packs.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. We should definitely do that. Do you know when he's back? I can reach out to him ahead of time so we can figure some stuff out as well.
Next week.
Oh, okay, cool. That's fine. The timing should work out then.
Cool. Thank you. Anything else in regards to RCs? No. Okay, next one, CMD updates and or questions. I wasn't able to find any relevant update from last week. Was wondering if anyone from you has something to share in this regard. Okay, seems like no.
I think most of the CMD conversations I was in last week are more applicable to the platform side of things rather than the Buildpack side of things. But I wasn't able to make it to the Buildpack author working group. So if anyone here did attend to that and had anything to add.
There was some conversation because the Buildpack author or tooling folks are working on the profile Buildpack. There was some conversation about the readiness or the structure of the libcmd v2 implementation. I think that conversation is currently being summarized or kind of taking place on, there's a PR that was opened by Dan that's something related to like generating a config object. That seems totally unrelated to like the actual conversation, but it's there that most of the conversation about what the API should look like seems to be happening at the moment.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Okay. Okay. Next up, project update. Yeah, besides the updates that you may share here, I wanted to bring up here a discussion that I recently created, the feedback repo. We know that there are plenty of Paketo Buildpacks adopters out there. We know you're there. Organizations using Paketo Buildpacks in production. We will be reaching out to some of these organizations to request their permission if they want to share briefly and publicly how they use Paketo Buildpacks. But also, if you want to just go ahead and share your brief story there, just send a reply to a response to this discussion with the information that is there, your org name, contact info, and basically how you use Paketo Buildpacks right now. We'll get you added to the public adopters list, which is also a way for us to learn about your use cases and keep improving the project. So if you're using Paketo Buildpacks right now in production, feel free to, and if you want to make it public, feel free to add this info to the discussion there. Cool. Great, and now the Jammy Tiny Stack is live.
We're like 99% of the way there. I just checked for it on Docker Hub and I'm not seeing it, so we'll debug that, but the release pipeline is working. There will be pullable images very soon.
Cool.
I'm curious to what extent for build packs that, you know, the dependencies are already such that they would run on Jammy, how much of the dep migration work we need to get done before we could actually enable that. Like, do we need to do a refactoring of the metadata and the whole thing before we can turn that on? Or is it possible in our current system to take things that would already run on Jammy and just enable them?
I don't think we know because we've only built a Jammy tiny stack and only really like Golang and I think Java native run on the tiny stack. I mean, as far as I know, we haven't explored base in full, which is where the rest of the Buildpacks would be running on.
Yeah, it's probably premature with just the tiny thing here, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I think if the same dependency will work on either stack, then like we're good in that we can kind of modify the metadata and the depth server that we have and have it start working just automatically, but it becomes more complicated if the dependency needs to be compiled on Jammy itself in order to work. So it's probably going to require some investigation to figure out which ones will just work.
Would the current depth server dependency mechanism allow us the flexibility of compiling, a dependency on Bionic and a dependency on Jammy and uploading both of those and PRing that into Buildpack TOML?
It would probably require some code changes that I personally wouldn't really be inclined to make, considering that we're going to be doing work to move away from it anyway. But if we were really in a pinch and we needed to desperately get something working, like, yeah, we could, modify the depth server probably and change some of those workflows, but I wouldn't advocate for it.
Sure. Just to share a little bit of context, the new approach will allow Buildpack authors to specify their build targets, Bionic, Jammy, or theoretically anything, right? And then specify which build packs stacks that will support. So if a Buildpack author determines that they can compile something on Bionic and it will run on both Bionic and Jammy, they can specify that and it'll get compiled one time, one entry in the Buildpack TOML metadata and with all the right stacks listed out.
Awesome.
Specifically for Tiny, like the ones that are running on Tiny is basically just Java and Go. And I think both of those will run given they're currently like how they're actually packaged. I know we don't really do anything much to the Go related stuff where we shouldn't be anyway. It should just run on any sort of Linux distribution. So I don't see why we wouldn't be able to also run it on Jammy. I think the only other dependency in there is dep, and I think that kind of falls into the same category of just like it's a Linux binary that should run on any sort of Linux system.
In Go right now, are we explicitly using the wildcard stack like we are in Java? Or is it?
No, they're explicit stack definitions.
Seems like something maybe we could do to loosen it up. I know there's maybe edge cases, like things we haven't tested it on, or like it's not going to work on ARM, but I think we're hoping that the overall architecture requirements, fix those things for us. But I think it'd be nice to add a flag to pack that sort of like made it less aggressive about checking these things, because then we could, use the approach of running integration tests to see what works.
Great. Okay, next up, HTTPD is coming to VStack and Builder.
Yep, I added this. Those are just some links to some PRs because I don't know that I couldn't find the right issue in time, but previously HTTPD couldn't run on the base stack. We have modified the base stack slightly to add a dependency. And so HTTPD, it will now run on base stack, and because of that, it'll run on the base builder as well. you can track the builder progress through this PR right here. Should be hopefully coming soon.
Great. Thank you. Awesome. And finally, Nginx debug mode is live.
This is another slight tweak to our existing Nginx dependency. We're now compiling it with a flag that enables a debug mode. Yeah, so hopefully everything should work. I don't know, Frankie, I don't want to put you on blast. Is there documentation of this written in like the README?
There's no documentation. The way of turning it on is documented with Nginx, but we could add it to our docs. If you want to see an example of how to use this feature, there's a test fixture in this repo. It's actually in this pull request that adds the appropriate line to your Nginx configuration to produce debug logging. But I imagine like if you're familiar with how to configure Nginx, it's what you think.
Great. Thank you all. Cool. Anything else you would like to share here? No. Okay. Well, thanks again for your time and hope to see you next week. A good one.